You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Welcome back. We now turn to our Reporters Roundtable, and joining us this week is Brenden Moore of Lee Enterprises and Jeremy Gorner of the Chicago Tribune. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks, Cole.
Thanks for having me.
So, Jeremy, I want to start with you. Last week, you ran a story talking about the political rhetoric that came out of those state fair days, and particularly some of the divisive political rhetoric, focusing both on some of the religious rhetoric from Darren Bailey, as well as obviously him doubling down on calling the city of Chicago a quote-unquote hellhole. What did you find as that was your focus during the state fair?
Sure. So basically it started last week where the group Awake Illinois was in town to hold a rally, small crowd, about 60 people outside the Lincoln statue. Awake Illinois, has basically kind of launched a crusade on so-called like parental rights, particularly with basically railing against school curriculum, particularly the way that sex education is taught, because of a bill that focused in part on teaching LGBTQ rights in the schools. That's obviously something that Awake Illinois is vehemently against, and there have been critics who have basically branded the group as being transphobic and homophobic because of that. They've basically railed against critical race theory being taught in schools as well. Darren Bailey, meanwhile, spoke at this rally, basically talking about how our freedoms can't be taken away.
So it starts with that Awake Illinois rally, and then it goes to...
Starts with the Awake Illinois rally, and later in the day, of course, we learned that at the state fairgrounds, 3 miles away, the Simon Wiesenthal Center was holding, basically it's called the Mobile Museum of Tolerance. It's a bus that basically educates students, business leaders, government officials, basically about human rights, civil rights, not just anti-Semitism. Obviously this has a special significance considering Darren Bailey at the time had come under fire for comparing lives lost during the Holocaust and World War II to the lives lost during abortion. So basically what you have here is you have the Awake Illinois rally on one side of town, where folks have been critical about a lot of their rhetoric, particularly against the transgender community. And then you have 3 miles away, you have a group that is really about human rights and has crusaded against bullying, anti-Semitism, just hate overall. And so basically the story was really trying to illustrate the dichotomy of the diverging viewpoints from each group.
Brenden, when we talk about critical race theory and transgender rights issues, all of these conversation topics were really a staple for not just Illinois Republican primaries, but also just primaries across the country in general. But now we're in the general election, and it doesn't seem like Darren Bailey's strategy has really shifted much. He talks all of the time about wanting to govern all of Illinois, but he's not providing a lot of on-ramps for people who weren't behind him before to get on board now.
Right. What Darren Bailey has been saying and who he's been associating with, that is not abnormal for today's Republican Party nationally, but it is a bit abnormal for Illinois Republicans, especially Illinois Republicans who have run statewide. Obviously, this state it would be considered a blue state by most. There's a lot of Democrats here. Obviously, all the statewide elected officials right now are Democrats. And so Republicans have traditionally had to moderate their positions if they want to win a statewide election. And we just haven't seen that pivot from Darren Bailey. When Bailey was speaking to that Awake Illinois rally in front of the Capitol, I guess I was just struck by the fact that he thinks that would be a good place for him to go to get votes, because those 60 people are already in the bag for him. He doesn't have to worry about those folks coming out to vote for him. They're with him. Whereas, he probably could have, maybe would have got a little bit more traction if he went up to the state fairgrounds and shook some hands, did some more traditional retail politicking, and maybe didn't associate with some of these groups, because they're audience is pretty small. I mean, yeah, maybe they have a following on Facebook, and we saw some of this during some of the COVID protests down at the Capitol that me and you covered quite a few in 2020. It's they have a little bit of a following, but it's not a statewide following or enough to win a general election in a state like Illinois. So I think that we're I think like 70 days now from the general election, and we still haven't seen that pivot from Senator Bailey, and you can even see that with his comments about Chicago. Yesterday, or I should say on Wednesday, the quote-unquote hellhole became, speaking of Chicago, became OK Corral because of all the shootouts happening there. And again, that's I think many would question if that's a good strategy if you're trying to win votes in the northeast part of the state, which you need to if you want to win a general election in this state.
Yeah, that event earlier this week, speaking to a group of farmers, the Illinois Farm Bureau holding this legislative roundtable that really gave these candidates a chance to speak on agricultural issues. The state fair really served as a kickoff for the general election, campaign trail. Mm-hmm. Now this was the first real big event since then that we saw these candidates show up. I thought it was very interesting. They kind of echoed each other. Both were saying that the other was trying to divide. Mm-hmm. That was a key word that Darren Bailey was saying when alluding to, talking about, differences in racial upbringing, everything like that, when he's referring to Pritzker trying to divide. And Pritzker obviously using what we've just been talking about for the past few minutes as evidence for Bailey trying to divide. How do you think that's going to play, Jeremy, for both candidates really trying to hit on that key word going forward here?
Well, clearly, so the hellhole comment, we saw, not the entire world does not pay attention to social media, but there were some folks on social media who were talking about it, and the hellhole comment, particularly among Chicagoans, was not received well. There were news reports about that, where news outlets were talking to some person on the street interviews of who did not look too kindly on that as well. So yesterday, if you remember, he was asked a question about uniting Illinois, and that's what during the Q&A portion of the Ag Forum, and that's when Darren Bailey talked about obviously the importance of uniting Illinois, and then he talked about it's united behind three issues of getting Pritzker out of office, and that's crime, taxes, and schools. And obviously with schools, he's talking about...
And he said in that order, too.
Yes, yeah. But then right after he talks about unity, that's when he makes the OK Corral comment, which many could argue which of course Chicagoans, like Governor Pritzker, did not look too kindly on that, saying that that's not uniting voters in Illinois, that is dividing voters. However, Pritzker had to come down here, or central Illinois, that is, because there's obviously a sense that there is a division between Chicagoans, which have which comprise such a bulk of the electorate in Illinois, and everybody south of I-80, who are largely going to be in favor of Darren Bailey. So. And Pritzker knows this, and he's trying to do what he can to, to sew that up, so to speak. So he knows that there's still division, just inherently because of that. Now, is the fact that he says he's trying to, he wants Chicago to thrive, just like other communities downstate, is that going to resonate well with Republican voters in central and southern Illinois? Probably not. They, a lot of voters in central Illinois, southern Illinois probably have their minds made up for Darren Bailey. That's his home base. So yeah, that just kind of goes to how each side is pointing fingers at, you're dividing us. No, you're dividing us. That's basically,
Brenden, we've seen Governor Pritzker start to show how he's going to be maneuvering around central and southern Illinois. Kicking off a bus tour earlier this week. One of the first stops on that bus tour was that Farmers Roundtable, and then on Thursday, he has several stops in Springfield and then heads over to Champaign to talk with the Illini Democrats at the University of Illinois. It seems like he's trying to, this is where he's starting, this big bus tour. Do you think he has a shot at, making a dent and gaining more of the state, or holding on to what he had back in 2018?
Nothing says campaign season like big bus tour. He rolled down that rolled up the gravel driveway yesterday and got off the big bus. And obviously he's going to be doing that, seems to be at least probably for the next week or so, making a lot of stops downstate. In terms of the governor's support downstate, I think that his folks are cognizant that he's not very popular down here in many parts. He didn't do very well, even in the last election, where he beat Governor Bruce Rauner by 16 points. He still lost most counties south of I-80. He did win some pockets, obviously. Liberal bastions like Champaign County did well in Bloomington, Normal, and Peoria, other major population centers, and he's been hitting up a lot of those on this tour, meeting with supporters downstate. No, I think they're aware that they're probably not going to get that many votes downstate. They probably don't even need to get that many votes downstate to win. But the governor, and he even said it yesterday, and he had the advantage of talking after Darren Bailey, so he probably had a chance to see what the senators said. But he said that, I'm not going to play into this regional Chicago versus downstate, dichotomy. He says we're one Illinois. He says that his predecessor, Bruce Rauner, correctly played into that as well as Senator Bailey. Instead, he pointed to the fact that if you look at some of the policies that he's enacted, such as the Capital Bill, a disproportionate amount of the money for roads and bridges and other infrastructure go to downstate. So, he's making the argument that I have been delivering for the whole state, even if I'm not going to get that many votes from people south of I-80. And I think there's almost only so much that elected officials on both sides can do to bridge this divide. Illinois is a very regionalistic state. No matter how you cut it, this election is between a billionaire from Chicago and a downstate farmer. That itself, it kind of creates this contrast. But I think Governor Pritzker is, his campaign is very cognizant of the fact that people think that he's a Chicago guy and that he's never downstate, and they're pointing to this tour that, look at all these stops I'm making in all these places, and I'm the governor for the whole state.
I was just going to say, if you listen to what Senator Bailey and Governor Pritzker were saying yesterday, Bailey was playing to his audience, basically, as a third-generation farmer,
He was
right?
very comfortable.
He was very comfortable, when he was speaking, and he even basically said, we need a farmer in the governor's mansion, in so many words. Pritzker acknowledged head-on, in so many words, that I really, excuse me, sorry, that's my second mulligan. Pritzker basically acknowledged head-on that he's not a farmer. However, agriculture is a business. He is a seasoned businessman, prior to becoming governor. So that's really how he tried to play to the Central Illinois crowd, to all the farmers yesterday. That was his way of doing it. And it was funny. Somebody asked a question in the reporters' Q&A about, I think it was Dave Dahl, about a lot of, kind of acknowledging that there are a lot of people in that machine shed who probably aren't going to vote for him. So do you think that this forum changed anything? And Pritzker said, I think 75%, he, or something like that, he may have changed their minds. I don't know how he arrived at that number.
I think it was just a very, I think in the spirit of Dave Dahl, it was a very offhanded remark.
Yeah.
In that way,
But the other thing I was going to add, though, is that, Brendan's talking about this campaigning, this bus tour that Pritzker's doing downstate. He's already going to some Democratic enclaves downstate, like Champaign County. Would it be, useless to go to more Republican enclaves, places where he obviously could be in trouble. And I only say that because, or maybe he doesn't need to, because he's, quite popular in the Chicago area. Because to contrast that with Bailey, Bailey's spending a lot of time in Chicago, and the suburbs, and obviously the Chicago suburbs are going to be very crucial, for him if he's going to have a shot in terms of especially the western suburbs that have become purple in recent years.
Well, Brenden, Jeremy, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Cole.
Thanks, Cole.
We'll be right back.